I'm smiling and singing and dancing. And Shirley Baumbright yells, "Stop! Everybody stop!" And we're like, "What just happened?" She goes, "Look at him! Look at him! He's sick, he came, he's smiling, he's dancing. You gotta learn from him." And I was like, "What? I guess I'm good at this." And I think my culture helped me become good at taking direction and being there and being present. And it was one of those positive reinforcements.
Yeah. So listen to your elders.
I got on that stage,
especially your immigrant elders.
And
Croatian.
then next year, I went from being a background
Respect your elders
to being the lead in Little Abner. And I was like, this is amazing. So I think those seeds were planted at a young age. And then so when I got older and old enough to start doing stand-up, I was like, I'm not going to give up. This is what I do, you know?
Yeah, I think for me, the fact that I had a real job, a corporate job for 4 or 5 years, I had a discipline about it because, and we all know people like this. There were women and men that were funnier than me, just natural. But it was about getting drunk every night or high every night, or chasing the waitresses, or what. And man, I'd go do a show and I'd come back and I'd have my notebook out and I'd be writing, and this worked and this didn't work, and so I always. And I tell people now, I'm like, everybody loves, out of show business, everybody loves the show, but there's a lot of people that don't give a rip about the business end of it. And so for me, it was like, I knew I had a passion for this thing, I knew I had a gift for this thing, but it was also the way I was going to feed my family. And so I'm like, I'm not out here screwing off, I'm trying to get better at this every day.
Also, Jeff, you can take this and apply it to anything. That's again, I talk to my kids all the time. I go, I don't give a crap what you guys end up finding. Like my son, now he's 12, he loves Dungeons and Dragons. He's doing like 10 hours of Dungeons and Dragons a week, and he tries to explain it to me. I don't even know what he's talking about. And I finally took a moment. I go, "Can I ask you a question?" I go, "Hey, buddy, as you do this, like, what do you think in the future? Like, is there a future? Like, does this lead to being more creative mentally?" And he's like, "I think so." I go, "Okay, that's good enough for me."
Yeah.
And my daughter under Zoom lockdown in LA, all I hear all day long, she's 10 years old, all I hear, she's in a private school, granted, so I'm paying money. I just hear her jumping up and down and dancing all day. And I'm like, what is she doing? What school? This isn't a dance school. All that said, they're doing their passion and they're loving it. And the fact is, as you said, like my parents, again, immigrant parents, wanted me to be a lawyer, doctor.
Sure.
And so I studied political science undergrad. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Then I go to Italy when I'm a junior in college to study abroad. I see a professor. I go, this is what I'll be a professor. That way my parents will feel like I have a reputable job and I get to be in front of people. So I come back down to LA, go get into a PhD program, quickly realize there's politics in the PhD program. And then I realized no matter what you used to do, there's going to be politics. So make sure you find something you love. So when the politics comes your way, you're not at all fazed by it. So when I got into stand-up and I became a regular at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, Mitzi Shore would give me a midnight spot on a Tuesday. I'd show up at midnight, leaving my then girlfriend, now wife, and be like, "Hey, I just gotta go do 15 minutes. I'll be right back." You get ready on stage. Here comes Eddie Griffin. He's gonna do an hour. Here comes Andrew. Here comes Colin. All these, and then I got up. I would get up at 1:45 with the club closing at 2.
Yeah.
But those are the best moments, by the way. And I was like, this is the right thing for me to be in. And it is. It's the work. It's the discipline. And it's really doing something you love that you'll be able to put up with all the politics.
That's why, like, once I became successful at this, I remember one night walking around New York, and my manager said, we were passing the Strip, and he said, "Hey, why don't you pop in and do a set?" And I said, "No." I said, because I was the guy sitting in there needing that $20 to eat, and I needed the 5 minutes or 6 minutes of stage time, and there's somebody that desperately needs that $20 in that stage time, and for my own ego, for come in and do a half hour, I'm not doing it, because I've been on the other end of that.
Dude, I so appreciate that, and I will say though, like, I think there's an art to it. Like, if you like Martin Lawrence for a minute, when the club was just starting to come back, his appearance helped. So he would say, I'm going to come do a half an hour. And he actually did a half an hour. And it was actually interesting because I had to follow him one time. So he just went on a local radio show here in LA and said, I'm going to be at the Comedy Store. And because I started at the Comedy Store in, I think, 99 or 2000 during the dark ages, when there was nights where you had nobody in the audience. And so Martin Lawrence comes along and says, I'm going to go do a spot, he announces on the radio. I pull up to the Comedy Store, there's a line outside the door. I go, what's going on? I come in the booth, they go, Martin Lawrence is up. I go, holy moly, this is amazing. He does this half an hour, and he's bringing me up next, right? And it's one of those things where it was like the opposite of what he just said, because he's like, all right, guys, I got to go. And the crowd's like, no, where you going? And I'm back there, I'm like, oh, my God. And he's like, all right, well, he doesn't know me. He's like, this guy's got to be funny. He's a regular here, bring him up. And I can tell the crowd is like, oh, okay. And I go, you guys, I'm just as disappointed as you. I want to follow Martin Lawrence.
I remember one night, because in New York in those early days, like in the mid-'80s, we would have groups of 2 or 3 guys, and it was like whoever got on had to buy pizza that night or whatever, so we would eat. And I remember I was up next to Catch a Rising Star, and George Wallace walked in, and Louis Ferrandis said, hey, George is going to do 5 in front of you, and 55 minutes later, I'm in the bank going, we're not going to eat tonight, we're not going to eat. All right, so let's back up a little bit. So we determined you got to be born with this thing. At what age did you realize you had the ability to make people laugh? What's your first memory going, oh crap, I can do this?
Again, I've thought a lot about this kind of stuff because, so we leave Iran late 78. There's a revolution in Iran. My parents' life gets flipped upside down. My dad was a successful businessman over there. And all of a sudden, he had to get his money out and come to America. So they're here. They don't speak English that well. I'm this 6-year-old kid. My sister's with me. She's a couple years older. And, I'd be planted in front of the television for hours watching, Woody Woodpecker, Popeye, Bugs Bunny. So I'm sure those things were, having their effect on me. And then I'd go to school around 3rd, 4th grade, and now we're in the early 80s, late 70s, and remember, there's the hostage crisis, and I'm this kid from Iran.
Oh, wow.
And I always say, Iranians are the only group of immigrants that I know of who came to America, and then quickly, their home country did something, took Americans hostage. So all of a sudden, we have this xenophobia in America, and we have Americans, again, as you know, when we get caught up in patriotism, we get blinded by logic, from logic. And so they didn't even think of the logic of, wait a minute, I'm going to beat up on this kid who left the government that's doing the thing that I don't like. So this kid's on my side, but that doesn't matter, I'm going to beat up on him. So back then they would call you effing Iranian, they would beat you up. I've heard stories now from other guys that had come around then that were saying, things like people being threatened to be killed, and just all kinds of crazy stuff. So I think, going back to then, I was in the 4th grade, and I remember a few things. First of all, I was a good athlete. That helped me make some money. And secondly, I remember I would go shopping with my mom. And again, my father was a successful businessman, so when we bring money to America, which my dad ended up losing in bad real estate investment. That's the whole of the story. But early on, when we go grocery shopping, my mom would have one cart filled with groceries for the house. And I had a sweet tooth, so I have a cart filled with Ho-Hos and Twinkies and, Starburst. Welcome to America, right? Variety. So I remember I would take a extra bag of candies. So in retrospect, I realized I was bribing my way into friendship by giving kids candy. I was an athlete, and I had a sense of humor. And I remember from a young age, anybody would say anything, you might say, hey, Maz, let's go. And all of a sudden, some song would come in my head, let's go, let's get out of here. I would just start singing it. So I think those 3 things, including comedy, were the things that helped me make friends and diffuse the tension that was around me. So I think from a young age, I started, finding comedy. And then I remember specifically listening to Eddie Murphy's tape. He had a tape called Eddie Murphy. Before Hilarious, it was Eddie Murphy. And I remember being in that room with my friends. We must have been 3rd grade, 4th grade. and he's talking about the Pope Mobile and whatever, and I was like, who is this? And that was my inspiration. I was like, I want to be this guy, and that set me off.
Well, I think for kids, it was acceptance. Like for me, I went back and counted, and like between first grade and 12th grade, I went to 2 different schools. So I was always the new kid, always the new kid. And so, but being funny, being an athlete, and I was a good athlete, but being funny immediately gave you credit. I mean, it was a way to be accepted. And so, even at the expense sometimes of the schoolwork, I was going to make people laugh. But, I think early on it felt good to me. It was like,
Were you a military child? Why were you in so many schools?
well, my dad worked for IBM, so he was getting transferred every couple of years. And then my folks split up, and we were kind of bouncing around. And so, I mean, you look back and go, God, that's nuts. But, it is what it is.
And it's interesting. You just said, you were going to be funny with us. So the other thing that I have, my personality is very much. What's the thing? It's like I'm someone who I can't do roasts because I have a hard time being mean. Like I've done a few friends' weddings and stuff, and I'll bring love around it. I have a hard time kind of being mean with my comedy, or I never punch it down. Like I really have a hard time punching down. So the place where my comedy would start coming out was making fun of the teacher, because the teachers were, the ones in power. It's crazy because I was a good kid. But I remember because as my son now is 12 years old and was having once in a while like some trouble coming along, and he's a good kid too, but some things would happen and my life would get worse. He's like, what's going on? I said, babe, let me tell you, when I was his age, I remember going to the principal's office a few times, and my mom had to bring, because again, my mother, English second language, my
Just a minute.
interpreter to be part of it, to be like, what is going on with this kid? And I was like, nothing. It was just, the teacher did something that was, I had to call it out.
Yeah. And I think that's so cool about what